Hello, and welcome to The Sit Down, a show created to shine the light on unknown and hidden topics. I'm your host, Isiah Moody. Today we're going to be talking about my hometown, East Palo Alto, as we zoom in the past and talk about the enormous amount of violence, as well as talk about their bright future. We have current mayor, East Palo Alto Mayor Larry Moody, as well as board member of the Sanitary District, Goro Mitchell. We're going to be watching a clip from A Dream of a City by Michael Levin so that you guys can get a visual overview of what the discussion will be.
East Palo Alto, California. Midway between San Francisco and San Jose, 2.5 miles square, divided from neighboring cities by a freeway. Its image frozen in newspaper headlines.
When I was younger, East Palo Alto was considered the other side of the tracks.
I live in the Gardens on the corner of Jasmine and Camellia. And I was also one of the people who stood on the street corners when we were dealing with street sale of drugs every single day, gunshots all day long, all night long, people being killed. I remember those things.
Tonight at 8, police are searching for the suspects who fired several rounds in front of a busy McDonald's. The shooting injuring 6 people, including a 6-year-old little girl. It happened at the corner of University Avenue and Bay Road in East Palo Alto.
Violent crime is on the upswing in East Palo Alto. In fact, so much so that city leaders have declared a crime emergency, and they are bringing in additional resources.
And I know now what it's like to be able to sleep all night and not hear a gunshot.
The diversity in East Palo Alto is so great. It's so rich with different communities, the Samoans, the Tongans, the Fijians, the African American, the Panamanians, the Hispanic.
Welcome back to The Sit Down. Joining us today is a man that I am honored to introduce, current mayor of East Palo Alto, but also my father, Larry Moody.
Hello, son.
Hello. Welcome to the show. As well as longtime community leader, as well as current board member of the Sanitary District, as well as longtime friend, Goro Mitchell. Welcome you guys to my show, The Sit Down.
Thanks for having me. Yes, it's great to be here. Pleasure.
I'm excited for us to dive into the topics that we're going to dive into it. So let's get started. We both, all of us watched the video on the overview. So I really want to just start the conversation off with where is East Palo Alto at now? Mayor of East Palo, Mayor Moody?
Well, you know, it's interesting. I don't know how it was for you, Goro, but just watching that video and just kind of realizing how many of the stakeholders, those individuals that really help us become the city that we are today, were a part of that video and a part of that struggle, who were making that determination that East Palo Alto was going to be a healthy, vibrant city worth fighting for. So today, I think what you're seeing is the fruit of that effort. Right? We are a community that's healthy. We actually had the highest reduction in crime and violence in all of San Mateo County over the last 2 years. We're very proud of that. We are a walkable community today. We are not saturated with the open market drug sales of that era depicted. So we are a community that's really engaged in the activities of the region. And I'm sure we'll talk more about that as we go on.
Definitely. And what about your thoughts, Goro?
Well, Isiah, I just want to really start with the vision of East Palo Alto. We incorporated it later, 1983, But one of the leaders of the incorporation movement, Dr. Omowale Satterwhite, expressed to me that the vision was to create a city where people of color could control policing and the land use. And for the most part, we have done that. And the physical kind of layout of East Palo Alto hasn't changed. There's not many new buildings. But what we've seen is a massive out-migration of people of color from the community because of actually pressures outside the community creating high rents and other things, of the growth of the economy outside of East Palo Alto. So this is where I see us, we have this kind of two cities. We have one where the city's denied to some folks, and then we have others that have come in and actually improved the crime situation and education situation in East Palo Alto. So it's a tale of two cities right now.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of interesting. I mean, because, you know, Goro's absolutely right. It is the tale of two cities. And the tension right now is how do we incorporate, right, the vision and the values, right, of the our early pioneers, if you would. We're only 34 years old as a city, right? So we're very new, right, to running our own local government and managing our own land and managing our own police force and those types of things. But how do we incorporate, how do we blend ourselves into the activities of the region, which includes the tech industry and the Facebooks and the Amazons and the Apple and the Googles that are within our doorstep?
Sorry about that. Before we dive into the challenges of East Palo Alto right now, I do want to just kind of take us back to when the vision of East Palo Alto was created, you know, and this is really for you, Goro. You were a longtime resident of East Palo Alto, starting back from the 60s, and you left in the 80s. And so I want you to kind of give us some stories about what that time was. How did East Palo Alto develop?
So my experience is in stark contrast to what we saw. Bob Hoover and these other folks have been family and have created so many things in the community. What I grew up was we had a Nairobi education system where you had pre-K to accredited junior college. There was all private, Afrocentric. You had community members that came. If our roof had a hole in it, the whole community came and we fixed the roof. You had a great amount of skills in the community and love, and all I saw in the community when I grew up was strong, powerful, beautiful black family men who worked together. So this thing of drugs and gang violence, I didn't see. And luckily I left right before, in '87, before it really kind of got out of hand. So that's just my frame of reference of early East Palo Alto, was this kind of this community of color that was moving forward, got control of the educational system, incorporated the city, did all this. So we were in a place of progression and control.
So when you left in 1987, 5 years after that, in 1992, East Palo Alto was declared murder capital. Did you see evidence of that, of East Palo Alto trickling down into that spiral and, you know, that becoming the image of East Palo Alto?
Well, a lot of things happened. You had segmentation in education. You basically had children from different parts of this small community being sent to different schools. Ravenswood High School was where everyone went before they had this, before it was closed. So this was a power base, a place where you basically grew and developed. My sisters went to Ravenswood High School. They're both physicians. They play multiple instruments, multilingual. This is kind of what came out.
Ravenswood High School is a high school that was based in East Palo Alto.
Right. It's where the Home Depot is, and the Ravenswood 101. The Ravenswood 101 shopping center is where our high school was. So you had this segmentation. So you had many of these different public policy-driven things that created this environment where you had these little communities fighting each other within East Palo Alto. But segmentation of education was one of those things. You had a breakdown in some of the leadership in the community as well. So I kept track of it. It was one of the motivations for going to college. Bob Hoover's wife and son sent me to college, right? Mary Hoover,
Bob Hoover.
And you know, I want to raise them up. And so this is the highly educated Stanford folks who came to East Palo Alto and settled and started building upon the work that other folks had already started in the community.
So then that would just leave me confused. How does a city that is so thriving, where, you know, as a predominantly African American community at the time, in the mid 80s as well as early 90s. How was that community so thriving then trickled down into becoming murder capital, being known as, you know, a place filled with drugs, and as we see in this other video, the other side of the tracks?
Well, it was crack cocaine, right? So crack cocaine hit California, it hit the United States, it hit every major city in the U.S. So a small community like East Palo Alto was just overwhelmed with this new economy that came into the community. We did not, you know, the people of East Palo Alto did not manufacture cocaine
or import
right?
it directly. No.
That's right.
Right.
But we got flooded, right? Not only with the cocaine, but the culture of addiction in our community. And so what you saw in that video right there was Bob Hoover, right, with a lot of community stakeholders trying to strategize on how to recapture the community, the health and wellness that Goro alluded to earlier, right? How to reclaim that community that they were so proud of and they were willing to fight to hold on to. But when that crack cocaine came in, you saw mothers giving up their parenting rights to their own children. You saw a marketplace that was developed on open street corners throughout the community where young people who should have been in school now were runners, right, making drug transactions at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. You saw customers who would come in from throughout the region. It wasn't so much that the consumer base came out of East Palo Alto. It actually came from the region, right? People came across that Dumbarton Bridge from Newark, Fremont, Hayward to purchase drugs. People came off of 101 from Hillsborough, Atherton, San Mateo, Sunnyvale, Mountain View to run into our community to purchase drugs and then head back into their communities of origin.
And the major investors in these drugs were folks in the region. They weren't East Palo Alto.
That's right.
These are folks who have businesses and they were investors. Like, you remember DeLorean and these, so you had
the owners
So the
coming
folks
in
who were
and-
actually controlling this drug trade were actually outside of the community as well.
Absolutely.
Right.
So for you, Mayor Moody, just knowing that you came into East Palo Alto as a community volunteer or a community leader when you came in 1992 and you were involved inside the Twilight League, and you're doing missionary as well.
Yeah, so
I want to hear some stories about the people that you interacted with. How was the struggle of moving out of, you know, that time period of the 90s into where we're at now?
I think...
What were the steps that had to be taken?
I mean, you're talking about, 1992, 93, where because of Mrs. Tiambe, Jama, I was watching TV. We were living in San Mateo at the time. 5 o'clock news came on, and it was a news broadcast from this woman, African-American woman, who was leading a vigil on Fordham Street, right, at Jack Farrell Park, right, to stop the drug trade and the drug activity. So I'm watching this on TV at the for part of the 5 o'clock news. And mind you, at the time, I was very active in urban ministry work, right, in conjunction with Victory Outreach Ministry and New Sweet Home Church of God in Christ. So I was engaged in this effort of reclaiming the lives of young people. So I saw this on TV. I saw Miss Tiambe. I saw the segment. They also announced that there was going to be a community meeting the following evening at the Bell Street Gym. And I came to the Bell Street Gym. And it was interesting. When I came into that setting, many of the people who were on this video were in that room twofold. This room was packed out with community stakeholders and leaders, right, and concerned parents about what was going on. And the call to action was, do something. Everyone in the room we were really challenged to find a way that we can have some involvement with the activities that were going on in the community at the time. And so being very ministerial in my approach, I got involved with the Midnight Basketball League at the time and start working with the young people who were involved in that crime deterrent activity. Not only did I become a coach for the Midnight Basketball League, the following year I actually took over the league as their director and kind of began moving that activity into a place where there was some measurable outcomes at the end of the program.
Yeah. A very, very powerful program, keeping folks off the street in the middle of the night, the kids. And a lot of times it wasn't over drugs, the killings. It was beef and fighting and these other things.
Absolutely.
And so the mentoring and you know, and that's a model that's used all over the country, is the midnight basketball programs. Yeah, very powerful. You also had a lot of other public policy that took place. You had unprecedented
gangbangings.
No, but you had collaboration and cooperation throughout the region, policing and other law enforcement. And you know, we give credit to our mayor at that time, Sharifa Wilson.
Right.
The mayors of Palo Alto, Menlo Park, and other places.
Yeah, you know what's interesting about that?
Yeah, brought resources here to kind of just to get things. Law enforcement is not the cure, but we had to get our community safe, and I think that's what happened. And then you had nonprofit, you had foundation monies that created programs to support our young folks, to give them an alternative, economic alternative to the lifestyle.
Yeah, and it was interesting. Goro raises, rightfully so, Sharifa Wilson, who's a longtime community leader, former mayor,
yes,
city
I love
council
Sharifa
member.
Wilson. College track, I love her.
Right, and presently she's the president of the Ravenswood School Board. But what was interesting, when she was the mayor, during this crisis time, I think it was 1994, 93, 94, when we were really just trying to figure out how we were going to interact with our partnering communities, Palo Alto and Menlo Park, as it related to the crime that was escalating. And it wasn't just impacting East Palo Alto. So the three mayors were all women. And it was interesting how the three of them convened, and they took an approach about the crime and violence that really was about nurturing. It wasn't about incarceration. It wasn't about more police. It wasn't about putting up walls, because many
just about nourishing the city.
Or nurture. They wanted to reclaim the lives of these young people, and not create barriers. And I think that was very significant, because the county was being directed by our local East Palo Alto Police Department to come in and help us, right, with the situation in the community. Because I remember our police chief at the time, I think it was Bernie Matthews was his name, he basically said, look, I'm afraid, right? I don't think we can handle this. And as a result, they got the county, San Mateo County, to be more involved with the activities of prevention in the community.
But I think what's interesting about East Palo Alto is I believe community development starts in the home. Okay, and what also happened is we had informal leaders. We had folks like Larry Moody, who had the whole community, young people, the whole community would come in with you and your siblings.
Yes.
And they would be fathered, and they would be mentored informally. And that's the way it was in my household. I didn't lose any friends on the war on drugs, because a lot of my friends came into the house, and my father and mother were there to help, and just be this visible kind of idea of what a man and a woman should be.
Right, and how they lead.
Yeah,
how they carry themselves.
Yeah, it wasn't even, it wasn't the intellectual, it wasn't the
react.
words, but our house was open to the community. And I knew I only can go so far. You know, there were barriers, and I didn't have to think about it because of the way, you know, we were raised. So community building starts in the home. It's informal leadership that really kind of fixed that problem of drugs. It was folks, grassroots folks on the street, mentoring, stopping. My father would stop drug dealers on the street and tell them to go home. Fearless.
Albert Mitchell.
Never seen anything like it in my life.
He was actually in our video.
Yeah, so there's this fearless, this principle, loving people hit the streets and change the community.
So I want to just now switch gears, and I want to now ask, how have the mayor, as well as, you know, community leaders, how have you guys been breaking down the misconception of today's East Palo Alto, you know, versus the image that is embedded in a lot of the peninsula?
Well, I think, you know, first and foremost is that Goro alluded to it earlier. You know, one of the institutions that was really challenged back in that time was our educational institution. And the leadership at the time was very instrumental in taking control over the Ravenswood Elementary School District, to creating the Nairobi Village educational model. The first charter school that I was ever aware of happened in East Palo Alto. right? And not only was it a charter school model, but it, like Goro alluded to, is really a K through college, right? Activity that provided direct mentoring and direct service.
Yeah.
So what is changing the narrative is that kids are coming out of our community healthy, whole. They're going to colleges. They're graduating from high school at a higher rate. They're going off to colleges and the universities, and they're embracing, right, education as a way to help with the change, being a change agent for our community. And as a result, they're able to leave the community and help change the narrative on how people outside of our community view East Palo Alto. We don't walk around East Palo Alto with this gloom and doom belief about our community. As you know,
we're proud East Palo Altoans.
We're proud, and we celebrate the diversity, right? You were fortunate enough to grow up in a very diverse community
and prominent household, but with so many others, such as my friends who grew up in single mother homes, and that seemed like that was the norm in East Palo Alto. And
but I don't think we need to change the image right now, because property is worth so much in the region. So people are moving to East Palo Alto because they can't afford housing in other places. And of course, this is creating displacement and some other things. So I don't even think that that's really important to change the image of East Palo Alto, because the land is worth so much. East Palo Alto has always had some kind of economic function in the region. That function used to be low-cost labor, domestics, construction workers, and these other things. But now the economic function is location for business and residential housing. So this is kind of a major shift in the community. So changing the image is I think a lot of folks are moving there. They don't care what the image is. They want housing, right? And they want to be close to these high-tech companies that are moving around our borders. And it really, and that's why there needs to be a little bit more action taken by these high-tech companies to kind of curtail the impacts of their folks moving into communities like East Palo Alto.
Yeah, and it's a regional issue. I mean, this is not just a East Palo Alto thing. It's going on in San Francisco. It's going on in San Jose. It's going on in Oakland, right? The economic growth in the area, and Goro alluded to it earlier, that's driving.
Yeah.
That's driving
Silicon Valley is now, one of the richest places in America, and it's definitely one of the, busiest places now in America, definitely the increase in traffic around here. But I want to talk about the East Palo Alto before that, supported a lot of, community businesses compared to what seems to be now the East Palo Alto now that's really surrounded itself around new and upcoming and name brand businesses.
Right, so quality of life is, I think having local business is important to quality of life in any community. And so our business district was actually bulldozed, and that's where you have that's why you have University Circle, you have the law firms, and you have the Four Seasons. So that was our businesses. So you kind of lack this interaction with your neighbors because you don't have a downtown. So that's very, very key to the quality of life. Our downtown is the Ravenswood 101 Starbucks.
Right next to the Home Depot.
So there's a little bit of room for improvement.
Well, we're going to work and change.
Yeah, and I think with our business district that we're developing, that we may have a downtown. That's part of the specific plan that was put together with a lot of input from the community.
But what about just community-owned businesses? Are those going to be thriving as they used to be, or is East Palo Alto looking?
Now you're talking to the right guy.
Are we looking for now just name brand businesses coming to the community to kind of just put the spotlight on us for people to stop by? But what about the businesses that were there before, Big Ants?
So Goro had this idea a couple years ago. It's still very relevant, and I want him to talk about a little bit about creating this co-op, right, environment for local businesses.
Right.
And
well, the biggest impediment is place and space. I mean, we can't afford $4 or $5 a square foot for a small business, and so that's the regional price and up. So I think that's really the biggest impediment. But there's some things we can do to. There's a lot of businesses around our homes, so we can do things like they've done in Ithaca, New York, and Madison, Wisconsin, where you can have local currency where you can actually spend this currency at local businesses. You can have a discount. 95 cents will buy you $1 worth of services or goods. So this has been done in other places. And for this probably to work in East Palo Alto, you're probably going to have to bite into a little bit of Palo Alto too to get those resources for the currency to work. So there's some things that we can do. But if you don't have place and space, if you can't pay a rent, then those small businesses are going to fail, even if you come up with a thriving kind of recycling of resources within the community.
I think that was one of the things about East Palo Alto when I first arrived in 1992, and I really got to know the community right around 94 and beyond, the politics and the activities of the community. One of the things that was shocking for me then, and it's playing itself out right now, is that the lack of home ownership by East Palo Alto residents. That we had such a large portion of what we believe to be homeowners who are actually renters. So when you have an economic push that the region is going through, that's creating this gentrification, activity, a lot of it is because people miss the opportunity to purchase their own homes. Many of the people who during the early days of the gardens in the village area were purchasing their homes or getting loans through the GI Bill. And they oftentimes during the early 90s sold those homes and went to other regions, Stockton, Antioch, Tracy, and those types of things. But what we see right now is that residents who we thought were homeowners who lived in a particular home for 2 or 3 generations never actually owned their home. So now the landlords are looking at the market, the trends of the market, and are forcing people to move. One of the things that we pride ourselves on as a city council in East Palo Alto is we have the strongest rent control ordinance probably in the Bay Area, easily. We have a just cause eviction policy that is very strong. It can stand a judgment of local courts. Landlords can no longer just come in and arbitrarily say, you have to leave, right? So there are protections for local residents that are trying to help stabilize people.
There are so many topics that we could be talking about and getting to, but we are all out of time. I do want to thank my guests so much. Yes, I know. It went so fast. There's so many things that we can be talking about. I want to dive in more. But stay tuned next week as we will continue with the discussion with Mayor Larry Moody, as well as community leader and board member Goro Mitchell. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Isaiah.
Yeah.
All right. Nice job.
Yeah.